welcome back to my channel. I hope the background fan isn't too distracting. I've got it on because there's a horrible siren noise outside and it's kind of like tinnitus in the ear. It's like a horrible kind of like high-pitched kind of siren sound. I think from some like industrial work or something at, I don't know, somewhere or other. It carries, it's really loud, it's like a horrible siren sound. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of, they were doing that a couple of months before lockdown as well, which one of the reasons I like lockdown was because it became so quiet, and it's like constant siren sound, not all day thankfully, but it has been going on since like most of the afternoon, and it's just kind of like pissing me off, so I've had to put the fan on to kind of block it out, because otherwise what happens is I get really distracted, and it kind of stops me thinking clearly, because that's how sensitive I am to noise. It really affects me, so bear with that. Okay, so I'm going to carry on reviewing Autism, a new introduction to psychological theory and current debate, from where I left off in last week's video. So I got up to a bit about social motivation, having talked about the social orienting hypothesis. And the other question, so this is all to do with, in infancy, what is the kind of initial sort of developmental pathway that then results in autism? How does autism manifest? Does it stem from, say, social orientation? Does it stem from social motivation? It could be all of them. It might depending on the person. So the social motivation hypothesis suggests that what ultimately contributes to autism is a reduced reward value in social interaction, as opposed to, say, an attentional bias, as in the social orienting account. Because in a social orienting account, the emphasis is placed on the idea that there's a reduced attention to social input, whereas in the motivation hypothesis, it's more that reward value for social information, reward value that comes from social information is reduced. So social information is not rewarding, basically. And this is an early bias that then has sort of greater kind of downstream effects over time. So it might be initially quite a small reduction in social motivation, but over time this then results in a greater manifestation, because it kind of becomes self-reinforcing. So for example, there could be a lack of social engagement. This then results in reduced social understanding. This can then undermine the already limited reward value of social information. I do relate to this to some extent. I think in myself that social motivation has actually decreased over time, because as I've always really struggled to understand social relationships and social interaction. When I was a child, it was very much about me kind of going out there and imposing myself on other people to try and get them to kind of engage with me, but I didn't understand how to do it in a kind of sensitive or like tactful way. And but I had more motivation, I think, because maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe it was because the kind of context of childhood, it's more about kind of playing games, like running around, rough and tumble, that sort of thing. It's not really based so much upon emotional reciprocity. That kind of develops later. And I think as that became more of a part of relationships, when it became more focused on emotional reciprocity and like give and take and that sort of thing, I began to struggle even more. And with that came an increased reduction in social motivation, particularly after experiencing a succession of rejections I really tried to try and make friends. I really wanted to make friends. I wasn't like a withdrawn child, but I didn't know how to do it. And when you've been rejected, that really hurts. And eventually you start to think, okay, I'm not really enjoying this because it's just too hard work. I'd rather do what actually I do find enjoyable and what I can understand. And of course, for me, that was like reverting into the world of Kate Winslet and babies. So yeah, definitely there's been a reduction in social motivation for me over time. I'm now, as an adult, not particularly socially motivated. That doesn't mean I don't want some relationship or some social impact, some social stuff going on in my life. That doesn't mean I don't want it. It's more that I find it so incredibly draining and so incredibly difficult that it's not at the top of my priority list in terms of what gives me satisfaction in life. So I can relate to the social motivation hypothesis, yes, and I guess it's possible. I can't remember right back to when I was very young, but I mean, I was an independent child, is what my mum described me as. I would often walk off, do my own thing. Yeah, although like I wasn't aloof or anything, and I was very alert and very curious and very inquisitive, she said, it was off. Like I was socially off. I didn't really relate. That was basically became noticeable from like toddlerhood, that I wasn't really engaging like I should do. I was basically doing my own thing. Like when I was at nursery school, when a teacher was reading a story, I would be going off and bouncing up and down on the beanbag. So I actually remember the teacher placing me quite forcefully on her lap because I just wanted to do my own thing. So I think it was there to some extent from an early age, but became more pronounced as I got older, because I did have some degree of social motivation as a child, at least from mid-childhood when I actively tried to approach other kids, but it then decreased as a teenager. So yeah. But there is a challenge to the social motivation hypothesis, and that is that many autistic adults do show a higher motivation to engage with others, and also the active but odd sort of type of autism, of course. If you're active but odd, then obviously you are going to be seeking out others. And as I said, as a child, I was very active but odd because I was more motivated back then than I am now. So it's not like I lacked social motivation as a child, it's that I didn't know how to engage with people, and then over finding when you're rebuffed enough, you're not getting rewarded then, because you're not actually getting any reward when you're constantly being rebuffed. And as you get older, and children are quite accommodating though. Like they might happily, like say if you're in a play park, a child might happily play with you for a short period of time. It's not like a genuine friendship, but in your child mind, you're like, oh, I've made a friend, just temporarily. But like teenagers are not as accommodating as children, adults even less so, and as you get older you get rejected more and more, and socialising changes as well and becomes more about small talk, and that's what I found incredibly difficult. So my social motivation went like that as I got older. An alternative suggestion is that social motivation is not a core part of autism where am I? I think I've got mixed up. Okay, I'm going to move on to video number 2 now to carry on this video, just so that I don't waste time trying to find my place. So moving on to video number 2 now.